What does Russia's invasion of Ukraine teach the world about what could happen between China and Taiwan? Here are a few possible lessons. Russia's surprising struggles in Ukraine present various lessons for the world in dealing with a possible Chinese invasion of Taiwan, according to the War on the Rocks site. Firstly, Russia's military buildup outside Ukraine demonstrates that any Chinese attack would likely be preceded by an equivalent buildup, and thus surveillance can prevent surprises. Things to look out for might include massing missiles, pulling together an amphibious armada, aircraft, paratroopers, and infantry, and assembling logistical support capabilities that are extremely difficult to keep hidden. Logistical preparations such as gathering large amounts of food, fuel, and ammunition, and assembling field hospitals in particular, could differentiate these efforts from a large-scale exercise. And similarly, units that rarely participate in East China Sea exercises would be called up and moved east. The second lesson is that a strong national identity could play a factor in creating stronger resistance than anticipated, with asymmetric guerrilla tactics harnessed in a similar way. A hypothetical invasion force could be met with ambushes, taking out vehicles with the types of anti-tank weapons being used in Ukraine. Key choke points like bridges or valleys could be defended, while mountains or rivers could be utilized as obstacles. With Russia facing resupply issues, we are seeing that the longer the Ukrainians hold out, the more challenges Russia is faced with, and the same would be true for China, an effect exacerbated by the fact supply lines would have to run through oceans, not land. The third lesson is that while of course warfare plays out militarily, it's also conducted economically. Russia has been blasted by economic sanctions, and China's global trade and overseas investments potentially make it vulnerable to the same kind of effort. In combination with actions such as banning Chinese planes from their airspace and ships from their ports, other countries could look to undermine the Chinese government within its own borders. The fourth lesson is that refugees may well become a major consideration in any future conflict. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees says around 3 million refugees have left Ukraine for countries such as Poland, Hungary, Moldova, Romania, and Slovakia. But the millions more who have remained stranded inside the country may be more relevant to Taiwan, where people cannot escape by train, car, or foot. In response to the issue, Taiwan could, for instance, look to begin preemptive discussions about how Japan could receive civilian refugees during a conflict, as well as focusing on stockpiling critical resources and relief items. And then finally, the last lesson offered by War on the Rocks is that wars come with unintended consequences. Russia's war has seen Belarus amend its constitution to allow it to host nuclear weapons. Finland and Sweden have gestured toward joining NATO. Germany has taken unprecedented steps toward increasing its defense spending and arming Ukraine after decades laying dormant. A Chinese invasion of Taiwan could cement an alliance between Japan and Australia, or push states like the Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, or South Korea closer to the US, according to War on the Rocks. The Philippine Coast Guard says the Chinese Coast Guard endangered its ships, and it plays into a much wider geopolitical conflict. Here's what happened. The Philippine Coast Guard has accused a Chinese Coast Guard boat of steering within meters of one of its vessels in the South China Sea, according to Agence France Presse. The incident occurred on March 2nd near the contested Scarborough Shoal, one of the region's richest fishing areas, and the Philippine statement accuses China of breaking international rules and risking a collision as its boat allegedly came within 19 meters of a Filipino patrol boat. According to the Associated Press, the last 12 months has seen 3 similar incidents around the same area, with 2 coming in June during a Philippine maritime exercise, and 1 coming a month before that when a Chinese Coast Guard ship moved close to a Philippine Bureau of Fisheries vessel. Additionally, in November, a Chinese Coast Guard ship fired a water cannon at Filipino boats trying to resupply Filipino forces occupying the second Thomas Shoal. The broader context for all such confrontations is that China makes sweeping and contested claims of sovereignty over the South China Sea, home to an estimated 11 billion barrels of untapped oil and 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, according to the Council on Foreign Relations, plus rich fishing grounds and strategically important shipping lanes. These claims rest on the so-called Nine-Dash Line border, first inscribed on a Chinese map in 1947, according to Time magazine, and despite the fact that a 2016 Permanent Court of Arbitration ruled against its legal legitimacy. China has looked to enforce it both with efforts at intimidation of other countries' vessels and by physically building in the region. The Council on Foreign Relations explains, in recent years, satellite imagery has shown China's increased efforts to reclaim land in the South China Sea by physically increasing the size of islands or creating new islands altogether. Practically, this means that in addition to piling sand onto existing reefs, China has built ports, military installations, and airstrips, most notably in the Paracel and Spratly Islands, where it has 20 and 7 outposts respectively. Additionally, and more recently, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, or CSIS, published satellite images that show China is also aggressively building electronic warfare installations in the area with the same broad aims in mind. The CSIS suggests that these installations could be designed to turn the waterway into an electronic dead zone in which U.S. ships and planes would find it hard to function. This last idea comes from the reality that while its policies regularly put China into direct confrontation with a number of nations in its region, including competing claimants Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Taiwan, and Vietnam, they also place it in conflict with the US, which has sought to maintain freedom of navigation in the region.
For more news animations and explainers, hit the subscribe and bell button to join the TomoNews family. Thanks for watching.